This is the DLR Cast, the essential podcast for fans of Diamond David Lee Roth. Ladies and gentlemen, heard you missed us. We are back. It's the DLR Cast, the only podcast by and for fans of Diamond David Lee Roth. I'm Steve, no relation to Roth, along with my good friend who I haven't seen in a real long time, Dangerous, the debonair, Darren Paltrowitz. Darren, what's happening? It has been maybe a little over a month since our last episode. We got some news, some things happening in all things the world of Van Halen and Dave. Good to see you again, my friend.
Likewise. It was my 3 months of cosmetic surgery that kept us from recording. No, all seriousness, Steve, good to have you back. Long story short, you're feeling good? You're feeling fine?
I am feeling real good. For folks who don't know or might not even care, despite being in fantastic shape at the recently turned age of 56, I had a heart murmur, which was something called a mitral valve prolapse. And 3 weeks ago, September 25th, I had open heart surgery, which went fantastic. I'm doing great. So doing great so far. Yes. Everything's looking really good. I promise I won't collapse in a heap during this this recording. 2 weeks ago, I would have, probably been too fatigued to do this, but I am glad to be back and doing well. So thank you.
Yeah, get yourself checked out if you need to, if you have any symptoms, if you have family history, etc. Now, when we say that Steve is in great shape, one of my jokes that I like to do is beat any child under the age of 10 years old in a foot race because I can sprint despite how it looks. Steve could, in my opinion, beat anyone in a foot race. He is an in-shape guy. So it kind of tells you that as healthy as you might look, get yourself checked out from time to time, even if you have mean doctors like I do.
Yeah. Well, it was actually my wonderful wife before she became my wife, heard a heart murmur, which I never knew I had. And that the summer before last, that got this whole ball rolling. So happy to be here and seemingly doing very well.
Yes, but speaking of people who are not doing well, there's been a lot of David Lee Roth stuff since we taped this last episode. And I got to say, Steve, this is not going to be an easy episode for me to be nice or like positive during, because it's one of those things that reminds me of why we started doing this podcast in the first place, where we go like, we're not getting the full story. We're left with so many questions from all these things. And some of these episodes we taped, there's nothing going on. And in this case, a lot has happened over the last month or change since our last episode.
Yeah, it seems to be a bit of the same, even though collectively there is a lot going on or had been going on. I guess we should also say belated happy birthday by a few days, October 10th. Happy birthday, Dave. So
yeah, whenever it's Dave's birthday, then it's another anniversary of Eddie's passing.
That's right.
There was a lot of stuff online about, happy birthday, Dave, but there was no post this year about, I miss Ed or anything like that. So Dave has been posting lots of content, more of the no holds barbecue stuff. You can never post too much naked Karen McDougal footage from the early 2000s.
Right. And you also can't comment and explain to people enough, apparently, as I want to do, where this footage is coming from, giving, the overwhelmingly positive response, cough, cough, that the comments appear to be at YouTube and at the social. So where's this from? Is this new? It's the, so where can I find No Hold Barbecue? Well, the same place you're probably watching this video. For starters, try YouTube.
And within 5 or 6 years of filming that, she would be under a gag order from President Donald Trump.
Exactly.
So it's funny when you do timelines and you think about it. We think of No Holds Barbecue as being this old thing that's 20 plus years old. It's not clear whether it was 99, 2000, 2001. The reason I say that is because Bart Walsh is in that, and Bart Walsh is blurred out of the footage that we see. Bart Walsh, as far as I'm aware, was gone by what, 2002? Because Brian Young did the Sam and Dave tour.
Yeah, and that was summer of 2002, actually. So he must have been gone early that year, late 2001, early that year. But yeah.
Yeah, and Bart Walsh, I don't think played on the DLR band from 97.
No.
And the hairstyle that Dave has in the era of this is comparable to what he had in the Diamond Dave album era, which also, so there, So what we do know is there's overlap between the Diamond Dave album, which was just a bunch of random sessions compiled, and the No Holds Barbecue. So 2000, 2001 is what we think it is. Now,
Right.
these John 5 things, and we'll get to the new one that came out. Okay, there was a blabbermouth thing today that cited me that talks about that it being from 2007. A guy I was texting with today who worked.
Wait, hold on. Go back 1 second, just so we're clear here, so folks know. The blabbermouth thing was talking about the audio to the recently released video on Dave's YouTube channel, which was a birthday video done by the ever amazing
Ramses Rios.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Yes. So
and that was on Dave's channel, by the way, his YouTube channel.
Yes. Yeah. Dave likes Ramses, so do we. But I'm hoping that doesn't stop Ramses from getting hired or endorsed because we both like him. And Team Dave does not like yours truly. Okay, so what I'm getting at here is that article that came out today about the new song with John Fife says that it's from 2007. A guy I'm texting with who was legitimately working with Dave on and off, I cannot say who he is. He knows that I may or may not cite him as a source for things. Has said he thought it was either 2009 or 2007 with John 5. But I was trying to verify all that for our taping today. And the John 5 article from 2014 says that he had been recording with Dave about a year and a half ago for these California sessions, which would make it 2012. So
right, but but here's the weird thing though. 2012 wasn't 2012 when A Different Kind of Truth came out?
Yes.
And that tour lasted that year. Did it go into 2013? I'm not sure.
I believe
it probably did.
How great he sounds vocally on these recordings is not how great he sounded in 2012 on tour. Now, my source told me that the John 5 sessions did overlap with him rejoining Van Halen. That possibly
back in 2006, 2007. The reunion tour was 2007.
Yes. So the John 5 sessions were possibly a contingency plan. I don't think that has ever been discussed before. You remember how we only learned from Frank Meyer and another person or two, then the early 2000s, that Dave had recorded with Michael Anthony, Alex, and Ed, and the songs just go for 90 seconds and then cut off.
Right. Long before, a couple years before the actual official with Wolfgang reunion.
And so we know about that. And where I'm going with all that kind of stuff is the timeline is still questionable about all the stuff. But the reason that Dave supposedly cut off all the songs is he's like, well, if this doesn't work out, I don't want to get screwed over like I did in 96.
Right. So now, he probably had all those 90-second recordings and can say this I have.
Yeah, it couldn't get released without his permission. They couldn't finish it. They couldn't credit it incorrectly. So now it seems like the John 5 album was also a contingency plan of sorts of, well, if the Van Halens don't want to finish this up, that's what it sounds like the John 5 was. The Van Halens partially knew about the John 5 thing, but they didn't know the whole story. That's what I'm hearing also. I'm also hearing that John 5 is under more NDAs than anyone on the planet because he's got Dave's, Manson's, Motley Crue's.
Right.
And so, in other words, John 5 is the most celebrated, nice, easy to work with guy on the planet.
Absolutely, he is.
To be able to deal with all that. And I'm sure Rob Zombie, who people like, I'm sure he has his own set of NDAs as well. And that my basis on that is, how many things have ever leaked out of Rob Zombie's camp?
Like nothing.
So when John 5 left and he was replaced by the guy who John 5 replaced to begin with, Mike, I forget what his last name is.
Yeah.
Who knew about it? Nobody. It's just you saw a gig and then Mike was back on stage and John 5 was out. And no one knew anything about that.
Yeah, it reminds me, I can't remember exactly when, but about 6 months ago or so, I think, somewhere around when those initial Motley dates were happening, or he'd already joined Motley at this point. John 5 did. And Eddie, he was on Eddie Trunk's podcast / radio show. And he was asked about Rob Zombie, and not being with Rob anymore. And he wasn't avoidant in any way, but he really didn't. It was an odd sort of answer. I wondered at the time if he's trying to say what he can't say in a way that, in the only way he could probably say it. Yeah, we're not working together anymore. I loved my time with him. It was kind of a political answer, but certainly no details on why. I mean, it was rumored that he was gone before he was, I think it was actually officially announced, I remember. And then I can't remember. It didn't, I remember at the time it didn't, and I don't think Rob said a single word about it, actually, if I recall, but it didn't seem like there wasn't any sort of, he left Rob Zombie to go play with Crew,
Yeah. And I have to add in, by the way, one of the best concerts, if not the best concert I saw this past summer was Rob Zombie. Because have you seen Rob Zombie live in the last, say, 5 years?
No, I saw him several years ago with Alice Cooper and John Five on guitar. It was a double headlining tour. This would have been like, Jesus, 15, 16, 17. And I thought he was blown. I was just completely blown away. Rob Zombie show was amazing.
Rob Zombie's music, I like the hits. I don't love the album tracks, but when you see it live, it's like Kiss times 4. There's more pyro, lighting, props, monsters, etc. It's almost like he took Alice Cooper's live show, and that was the tour. It was Alice Cooper, Rob Zombie, Filter. Fantastic tour. It's like he took Alice Cooper's show and went, I'm going to outdo every single thing times 2 or 3, because Alice Cooper has that big monster thing that comes out.
Right.
Rob Zombie, multiple songs, has a big monster that comes out and he dances with.
Yeah, it's Alice Cooper's, it's shock rock on steroids, really.
Yeah, so
with a complete love of horror movies, as we know Rob does. Yeah, I've watched a lot of videos on YouTube. His show is amazing.
It really,
and he's a great front man. The guy's nonstop, and his band is always tight as hell, and it's just it works for me live. I always
tight as hell, recorded as hell, whichever verbiage you want to use. Right. The music is secondary, tertiary to the whole thing. But what I'm getting at is Rob Zombie is delivering an amazing show that it's like 5 degrees past Van Halen being state of the art. This is what rock has kind of evolved to in a really awesome way.
Yeah.
So I don't think that John 5 ever stopped evolving his taste, but we kind of pigeonhole him as this like 70s, 80s hard rock guy, even though he's a lot younger than a lot of these people. So with John 5, kudos to him and all that. This new Dave song, be honest with me, what do you think?
I mean, it didn't light my world on fire. Like, it's cool video, by the way, but it's 3 minutes of what?
Okay, I am so glad that you also don't think it's great. I listen to it and I go, that should be an electric guitar song. What is this?
Yeah, I mean, it's fun. It's cool, but it's not as good as so now we have 6 tracks from those sessions.
Yes.
If you're doing it.
And none of them playlisted on Spotify, and this is also not on Spotify.
Wait a minute, no, the other songs were on Spotify.
As of earlier today, this song was not on.
This song is not, no, but the other songs previously all are on Spotify.
No playlist implying that's a new song or anything like that.
Of course, given how they release things, sometime it could be on Spotify tomorrow for all we know. I mean,
okay, benefit of the doubt here, but what I'm getting at is No Holds Barbecue, probably 2000, 2001. This probably recorded in 2007. This is only like 6 years after No Holds Barbecue, yet we're treating this like it's new music, and No Holds Barbecue like it's this old thing from the archives.
I mean, well, yeah, I mean, Manda, I need to Google what that means and what language that is, but I'm sorry, I got my videos messed up for a second there, which is no surprising given the last couple of weeks. But Ramses did that birthday video.
Yes,
and I could have swore that said something that was from the John 5 sessions. The music in there, was it? I could have sworn the notes. But Manda Bala, there was another
video. I just remember a still shot with the music on the inside.
Yeah, no, what I was looking at, right, yeah. Anyway, I've been on a lot of painkillers. Let's just put it this way. Oxy's been very good to me. But no, but I like it. I mean, the other songs from the sessions I really dug. I was more excited about, and I just, maybe I need to dig this a bit more, listen to a bit more. I mean, I guess stylistically it fits in with the other songs we heard, but again, I question that the more I think of it. When was this recorded? Was this all recorded in one John 5 album sessions, or I got a feeling most of this stuff is done piecemeal?
So we don't know if it was 2007, 2009, or 2012. I'm ruling out the 2012 based on that USA Today article. I think it's from 2011, where Dave talks about these John 5 songs with relation to, I don't know, a jukebox musical because he'd seen the Book of Mormon. I have no idea what he's talking about, but I do know that the Van Halens were presented these songs and turned down these songs. Now, I'm wondering if Dave was only politically using these songs to light the fire to the Van Halens, going, we need to do an album or else I'm going to do one without you. And that's what this all was. Now, as I say that, last time I checked a couple days ago, Different Kind of Truth, still off all digital platforms. My reliable source does believe that's because the 10-year license lapsed on it. It's not
Okay.
accounting oversight. And the Deep Throat Dave person, who I believe is one of the two sisters of Dave, based on some of the identifiers presented,
Right,
said that DLR band not being on streaming services was an oversight. The person who knows what they are talking about, notice I did not use a gender pronoun right there. The person who I believe knows what they're talking about says, no, Dave is embarrassed by that album. There's a reason it's not out.
embarrassed by what album?
The DLR band album from '97.
Embarrassed?
The commercial expectations on it were nowhere near what it was supposed to be. And that is the exact opposite of what the Dave Deep Throat told the Dave and Dave Unchained podcast, where they were talking about how much money it made.
Yeah, well, recall too, it was on What Was That Records. I mean, and barely had distribution. I mean, it had a big radio hit, which is probably where the bulk of that marketing budget was spent on independent promotion.
Funny you should say that, because one of the people I tried to interview for my book, who's thanked as the radio plugger in the album, Heavy Lou Bronstein, I think his name's Heavy Lenny Bronstein. I said, hey, I'd love to interview you for the book. I'll be in Vegas, and this is right before COVID. And I'd love to interview you for the book. Or I'm sorry, no, this was in the midst of the canceled COVID one.
Right.
Said, I don't remember anything about that. No comment. Yes. So I'm hearing all sorts of conflicting things about whether the DLR band album was successful internally or not.
At this point, success from a number standpoint is relative, right? I mean, it came out on some indie label.
Yes.
Which I mean, how much success? I heard. I remember reading somewhere and that it did like 150,000 copies or something, which for an indie label, if that's even true, I remember maybe, I don't know. I remember reading that a long time ago, which maybe have been a bunch of hopium and hype, I guess. But
yeah,
but
not possible.
I don't think so either. I wish I still had SoundScan access. However, having said that, here's the other thing about that record is that the reputation on that album among Van Halen, Dave era fans and Dave fans is that it's a great record. You want to know why? Because it really is. It doesn't sound fantastic. I was never too crazy about some of the production there, but as a cohesive, song by song, album by album, it's got, obviously John 5 on there. I mean, the song Relentless is one of the best solo songs he's ever done. I mean, it's killer. Yes. The lyrics, the riff, John 5 sounds amazing. And then, and I'm completely spacing on the guitar player that was with him who for Your Filthy Little Mouth. Terry Kilgore, that's right. Terry Kilgore co-wrote some songs on it. Arguably, the songs he co-wrote with Dave on that record are better than several songs on Your Filthy Little Mouth that he co-wrote. Sure. And he plays a lot of guitar on that record. Ray Luzier's on drums, if I recall, on the whole thing. John
Mike
5
Hartman, I got to interrupt you. Mike Hartman also put down guitar in a few songs.
You're right, yes. So as a cohesive record goes, it's a damn good record.
It was a mix of 3 different guitar players and their sessions. And Bart Walsh was in that era, and Brian Young was almost within that era too. So that was the revolving door of 5 or 6 guitar players for Dave in a 5-year period.
Yeah, and that's yet another one where time is all relative, because we've talked about this before. Oh yeah, the album was recorded in a 2-week session in Florida. What?
Yeah, no, it wasn't.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah, so I'm just very confused about all this, because we can talk more at length about this, but Dave appeared for another corporate gig in Vegas within the past couple of weeks with Steve Stevens's
Royal Machines.
Royal Machines, which was a Camp Freddy offshoot or a Kings of Chaos offshoot. And it's so bizarre to see him in that awful vocal state and then putting out these crystal clear vocals on this new song. It's almost like somebody realizing, like, I got to go on the dating apps. Well, what era of dating app photo should I put out for my profile photo? Should I put out the one when I had the full head of hair and was in shape? Or should I put out the one that's actually what I look like?
Yeah, I mean, I tried listening to some of it. So it was just within about a week or 2 ago, 2 weeks ago. It was in Las Vegas. It was an Oracle software corporate gig. I have no problem with somebody making as much money as they possibly can. I am a capitalist at heart. But however, first off, vocally, if you can't do it, you probably shouldn't. If you're halfway there, you could probably get away with it for a song like You Really Got Me.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, man, everybody's doing corporate gigs. I get it. And this whole all-star cover band thing has been a number of years, now with, King of Chaos, which has a bunch of different lead singers. They were just all down in Brazil with Robert Zander, as a matter of fact. I mean, and of course, then there's the Johnny Depp, Alice Cooper thing. Who's I'm forgetting, God, my memory,
Vampires.
Man. Hollywood Vampires. There you go. So I get it, but this just seems like a really odd, different animal to me. Because no doubt the band is tight. Steve Stevens, man, I would have loved to have heard what he could have concocted in Dave's prime, way back. He's always seemed to me to be a perfect guitar player for Dave. But for this,
supposedly, let's interrupt for a second. Supposedly, he was offered it before Steve Vai, but he couldn't because there was a Billy Idol gig. But supposedly, some of the Edelman Smile guitar gear was borrowed from Steve Stevens for that album.
Yeah. I mean, in the past year or so, we had Dave doing a full corporate band gig with his band in Mexico somewhere, of which no video has seen the light of day. And then we had a Home Depot show somewhere. Was that also in Vegas? In Vegas. Okay, so sure, it's a 90-minute flight or whatever it is. I get it. They pick him up at his house. He gets to LAX, whatever. It's an easy gig, 3 songs. Is there 6 figures probably involved? That is easy paycheck, sure. Does he
possibly, yeah.
I mean, but this does him no good from an artistic standpoint, from a legacy standpoint, because listen, Van Halen once did a corporate gig in Vegas. Was it the reunion tour or a different kind of truth tour? I remember and so I guess there's no level of band that won't succumb to, the corporate band thing. I mean, I kind of understand it, but on the other hand, it's like Dave to me should have been at a different level. I almost would feel better if he's doing a full band gig and sounds real good with whatever band he's got at the time. And God knows that's a revolving carousel of people versus how many songs did he do in this Oracle? I only saw You Really Got Me.
The same 3 that he did at the previous one. But let's pause this and think about things logically here. The US Festival, which is Van Halen with Dave's most famous gig ever, arguably that was a corporate gig.
Well, but it was open to the public.
It was open to the public, but when you learn that they had the most favored nations clause in that, and they were chartering things.
Oh yeah, that's just smart business sense. I mean,
yeah, but it was a corporate gig from Apple, more or less. So, and Van Halen, the stories from the early 80s about the corporate sponsor that they were going to take, and then they wound up not agreeing about it, so they went with the Exterminator company, doing the reverse corporate sponsorship thing. Dave is very aware of oh, is this a good look? Is this a bad look?
Right.
He's not out of it. So
right. No,
very aware that this is a cheesy corporate gig.
it's got to be about the money then.
From what I've heard, there's not as much cash flow as we think there is. I'll put it to you that way. That the tattoo company was actually a substantial loss.
Oof.
That the tattoo company was not a, oh, this is just a couple of bucks, as in the tattoo company was a disaster on every level. That's what I've heard.
I would bet you all the principals involved with David inked the original sign NDAs also.
And one or two of them still work with him, believe it or not. They were the only people ever to have wronged Dave and not been fired.
Wow. I mean,
so I took you way off course here. So
yeah,
the gig, yeah, it was the same 3 songs for this Oracle Arena corporate thing as the Home Depot.
Yeah. I mean, no surprises, right? It seems to me that this is the MO going forward, drips and it has been for a while now. I mean, will it be 6 months or 6 days? We see another song from these John 5 sessions. Again, we say it every week and I see it. It drives me crazy. The lost opportunities, the protection and the enhancement of the legacy that could be going on now. And that includes, of course, and it's a good segue to Van Halen.
Well, I mean, but prior episodes, I've said, hey, Dave, be more like blank. And I've said Coverdale in the past. My new one of Dave, be more like blank is Dee Snider. Dee Snider, excellent shape, stays out there, does interviews, not afraid of the Comic-Cons if it's about pushing a product, because he was just at the New York one last week. Dee Snider put out 2 really heavy albums in the last couple of years, basically because somebody dared him to do it. I think it was the singer of Hatebreed and went, you've never really done a metal album. I'd love to do a metal album with him. And he went, okay. I'm not saying Dave should do a metal album, but I'm saying that there's other peers of his who are around the same age, who are in their 60s, who, whether or not they have their full vocal chops, Dee Snider, for the record, has his full vocal chops.
Right.
But I'm saying there's so many options of things that he could be doing. And the paintings we still don't know what all that was. Or the cartoons, we still have no idea what that or the digital comic was. All I'm asking for is some clarification.
Continuity and clarification. I was just thinking, of course, I mean, is the podcast on hiatus or is it done for good?
We don't know that either, because all these photos of him dancing and all the No Holds Barbecue, none of them that I've seen have had a throwback tag, a TBT hashtag kind of thing. So if you're a casual fan, you're like, oh man, Dave looks great. You're like, yeah, because that was him at age 48.
Right.
So I took you off task here. So the Van Halen legacy, yes, that Van Hagar box set, which I had the pleasure of unboxing for the Paltrow box. And it occurred to me while I was unboxing it, they're like, it's the complete Hagar. And you're like, no, it's not. It doesn't have Live Right Here, Right Now in it.
Good point.
So why doesn't have, and I thought about that. Why does it not have Live Right Here, Right Now in it? Because it has publishing money to Dave.
Right, because they're doing the 6-pack songs.
Yeah. It has a Who cover on it. I mean, the Who will clear anything.
Right.
Hey, Pete Townsend, he'll more or less do anything. But it had Panama, it had Jump.
Yeah, because Right Here, Right Now was 86.
Right Here, Right Now was 93, I thought.
Wait, what's the one? I'm thinking Live Without a Net. Sorry, you're right, 93. Yeah, so, yeah.
And it doesn't have Live Without a Net either, which I don't think, have we ever seen in a CD version? I know it was a home video, but I don't think it was ever a CD. Why?
That should be the title of this episode. Why?
Yeah, exactly. Why was there? They recorded all this stuff. So, I still think that there's a ton of stuff. A thing came out within the last couple of weeks while we were on break. Jack Douglas, the current drummer of Aerosmith, the son. Jack Douglas is the producer. The son is it John Douglas or JD?
I think so.
Now, he was Alex's tech, and he said in an interview, oh, man, they filmed so many of these reunion shows. They filmed the Madison Square Garden show. They filmed this. They filmed that. The Madison Square Garden show, somebody else who listens to this podcast who didn't want to go on the record, who may or may not have written some press releases for a reunited Van Halen.
Darren doing deep background. Is that what you call it?
They may or may not have been paid by the Van Halens directly at some point in time. That person had told me that the Madison Square Garden show was recorded or supposed to be recorded in the Dave reunion era. So that's like yet another question. They did record these things. They had intentions of doing that. Supposedly the Tokyo show that did come out, only audio, no video. And it was an impromptu decision to record that one.
Well, the whole concert is on YouTube. The whole concert is on YouTube, but I can't remember. I don't think it's pro shot.
No, I think it's compiled from like 5 camera angles. So we know that there is stuff recorded from the Roth reunion era. We know that stuff was professionally shot from the Hagar and Sharon's eras, because with the Sharon era, the Australia show, did you ever watch that on YouTube?
Yeah. Yep.
It's tough. It is tough to watch.
It is. It really is.
I don't like and I'm going to make fun of Gary Sharon a lot because I used to have this positive thing, but once Extreme's management was super rude to me, I'll make fun of them endlessly. Nuno is cool. Is cool. It's timeless and cool. But Gary Sharon's stage moves are so embarrassing in that concert.
They can be a little bit odd, and I'm telling you from being an Extreme fan who thinks that their new / latest record that came out this year is amazing and one of my favorite hard rock records the entire year. And I saw them in August, and they sounded. I mean, this is a band. These guys were all in their 50s, sounded and looked great. And I'm reminded of the fact that Sharon, so much of his moves come from musicals, right? Wasn't he a theater guy? And so they don't always fit with the hard rock songs, but man, is the guy in great shape, and he's still got the pipe. So I was reminded this year, the last 4 or 5 months, how much I love that band
because of Nuno.
Well, no, the songs too. That new album 6 is fantastic.
No, and I'm partially kidding. I'm partially giving a hard time because of how Extreme's manager was to me in writing. It was not nice. It was really condescending, and I didn't do anything to belittle him or Gary, who I'd interviewed in the past. But what my whole point before I sidetracked was, we know that there's Sharon stuff recorded on video. We know that there's Sammy stuff on video that's not out and or included in this complete box set. And we know that there's Roth reunion stuff that's recorded and we have no idea on the status of. And that's been a recurring theme on this podcast. Like, what is in the archives? Now we know it's all 3 eras. There's stuff in the archives.
Yeah. The problem is I can only imagine. I mean, I was thinking of a quote that Wolfgang said a couple months ago, whatever interview it was, where he's like, just basically saying how dysfunctional as a band Van Halen. I think he was saying present tense, and I think he was mainly alluding to Dave.
Yes,
I think that fact is clear. And I'm sure pre-Wolfgang, it was really difficult to deal with Alex and Eddie because of their issues for a long time. I mean, they certainly didn't do Michael Anthony any favors. That's just, you can't whitewash what they did to that guy. I mean, it's just very, it's shitty and unfair. And I mean, is it all about money? Is it all about lack of vision? Is it egos when you have that much stuff? Because time's a wasting, folks.
Yeah.
I mean, especially if cash flow might be an issue also.
Allegedly. I'm going to say the word allegedly 5 more times to protect us.
Right.
Allegedly, yes.
But here's the thing. I'm assuming in royalties and really a good package and really mining and maintaining that legacy could certainly over the next few years make a lot more money than some corporate gigs doing 3 songs in Vegas when you can make the argument that you probably shouldn't be doing that right now, at least from a legacy standpoint and how you sound. Having said all that, looking back a little ways, the Henson sessions, the Van Halen covers they did, I mean, passable, sounded okay.
Sounded okay.
Vocally.
And never made a playlist that would recap all of them into an album.
Yeah. So again, what's the point of spending that money and doing that?
Yeah, he paid everyone their full day rates and then some. He rented out the studio and then some. So that's a case where, yes, it's his money and his thing, but just the extra 10% of the work and you'd have an album or a thing to sell.
Right. I think about this all the time, just being a product management guy and marketer and just an all around huge fan. I have these, especially as I've had a lot of recovery time of late. I think about all the things that, and we talk about this all the time, but in particular for the John 5 record, right? That have been coming out in dribs and drabs. Okay. If you had an actual full album coming, putting 3 or 4 songs ahead of the record with some cool videos, let's say, with it is a smart idea. Guess what? Hey, speaking of Extreme, it worked for Extreme. They did amazing videos ahead of the record, got everybody psyched. Yes. And they had some, and that record in today's day and age is a huge hit for them, considering how long they'd been away with the studio record. But they did it right. They have a physical piece of product. You can get it digitally, and they led up into it. It was no surprise. It wasn't dropped on a Tuesday. Hey, new Extreme record. You got to capture the fans' attention. You got, right?
Yeah.
My thinking is you let John 5 do press, right? Maybe Dave does some limited press about where it's like, hey, I'm only talking about this record. Now, whether Dave could stick to those press parameters would remain to be seen. But imagine this, right? The record comes out on all the digital platforms. Hell, even produce some vinyl with Dave doing the cool artwork in a limited edition, pressed like 2,000 copies. I mean, could you call it milking it? Yes, we want this shit. Anybody over the age of 40 that grew up with this stuff, or even young, I mean, we want this stuff, whether it's Dave or whether it's Van Halen. And sure, there's a limited amount of Dave fans out there that are going to go buy this stuff. But it's new, it's newsworthy, and it could make some money. Dave's not going to lose any money putting out that John 5 record.
Okay, so I'm going to take your idea and I'm going to put it on steroids right here.
Go for it.
In my endless quest of Dave, why don't you be more like blank? Okay, so do you remember a year or two before the pandemic when Gene Simmons came out with the Gene Simmons Vault?
Yes.
Okay, I may or may not have come close to buying that vault.
I may or may not have come close to buying that as well, because as being the huge Kiss fan that I am, but I also know Gene's songwriting has always been about quantity and not necessarily quality, Correct. But still again, I'm going to bring up the word legacy, but as an inside look of the creativity and the stuff, there's so much unheard of stuff, man, it got me super curious.
Okay. So I had the pleasure in that era. I think it was 2017. So maybe it was 3 years before the pandemic, but I had the pleasure of interviewing Gene in a hotel room about the vault. And he did all the thing like, knock on it. You see how it's not flimsy. You see how great it is.
Right.
Open it up. See what's inside. That kind of a thing. And I went through it a little bit. And it was like a coffee table book that had beautiful photos and text. I think it was 5 or 6 CDs of unreleased things, including 2 things that had Eddie and Alex Van Halen on it.
Right.
So it was a star-studded thing. It had a thing or two from his childhood, etc. Now, if I remember correctly, the cheapest tier to it was $1,000.
Yeah,
it was 1,000 or 1,500, and that included you being able to go to some group meet and greet for him or with him, and then I think up to like 40 grand was he came to your house or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
There was something ridiculous like that. But in the case of Dave, there are all these unreleased ideas that we know aren't that great. It would be cool to listen to once, kind of like these Gene Simmons things. So if you combined 5 or 6 discs of all these crazy covers and sketches and demos and rants and all that, with a coffee table full of all of his paintings, these prints of all that kind of stuff, a cheap action figure because Gene had a cheap
action figure.
There was a really cheesy action figure or two. I don't know if it had a thing for his soda. At that time, he was hawking Moneybags soda. So
right.
A year later, I met him at a 7-Eleven in Niagara Falls. I was coincidentally in Niagara Falls and he was signing 6 packs of his root beer. Now, I'm not saying Dave has to go there, but I'm saying a lot of this content we only want to enjoy it once. We're not going to listen to all these things 1,000 times. You're going to go, oh, that's an interesting alternate mix. So, for example, the Ramses has posted this to his YouTube, the dance remix of Stand Up from Skyscraper. Have you ever listened to that?
No, but you had texted me that a couple of weeks ago, and I meant to.
It's
a week or two
awesome.
ago.
It makes Stand Up better than the single version, than the album version. It's very interesting. I would bet 0.1% of Dave's fans have heard that or know that exists. And I would bet further that Dave has paid and commissioned for dance remixes of every single thing he's ever done from some unknown DJ somewhere. The way that he collaborated with Armin van Buuren right before the pandemic. So what I'm getting is Dave is the ultimate candidate for a vault like Gene Simmons, where he charges $1,000 to $2,000 a piece. He sells about 25,000 copies of it worldwide, give or take the meet and greet option, and millions upon millions of dollars while clearing out the archives.
I like it. Maybe the action figure's a little bit too much for me, but again, you've got this great content, for lack of a better word. It might not all be great music, but what is it going to matter when you're not here, right? Will it ever see the light of day?
Yeah, so it's just, he's zero emphasis on that stuff, but hey, great, a corporate gig. When you do these corporate gigs, you could tell the people in the audience all you want of no filming, no filming. You could put up all the signs. It's being filmed. I mean, the corporation itself is filming it for liability purposes. It's a casino. There's a camera every 15 feet.
Right.
It's being filmed. So you have to know that whatever you do in Vegas is going to be unearthed at some point. So I just don't get it. So if you recap of what we got in the last month, we've got a more no holds barbecue social media that's not posted as old. We got an old song that's not posted as old. We've got a corporate gig. What else have we talked about?
Well, I'll tell you what we didn't talk about. And what was it, about a week or so ago, the Tapes Archive YouTube channel put an interview that I hadn't heard before, posted the audio of an interview from the podcast Design Matters with Debbie Millman, and it was from 2019. Mm-hmm. And it's a good almost 90-minute long interview, and it's about as deep and as introspective. I think it's a better interview than what he did with Maron. Mm-hmm. And a little bit more laid back, and certainly better than what he did with Rogan. And one of the things that there's a lot that stood out to me here, and it's a long listen. And some of the stuff we know, a lot of the stuff about Uncle Manny and a lot of that stuff, which put a pin in that Uncle Manny thing for a second, because I had an idea about that. But one thing she asked him how many instruments he plays. And he talks about playing, I think it was, taking jazz guitar lessons for years. Ugh. And then he said something. He said, I want to get to the point where basically he could be busking, right? And I love the idea. And that brings up the fact that I genuinely did like the Diamond Dave record, the cover album. I didn't love every song on there, but as far as a piece of music with some cool covers and some cool ideas on it, I liked it. I don't want to say I loved it. Maybe I did.
It's very uneven. It's
very uneven. The John 5 song doesn't need to be on there because that's not a cover. No. But as we know, and I bring this up all the time, he's done a lot of cooler covers. Shine a Little Love by ELO. I listen to that multiple times a month. It's on repeat on my MP3 player. Baker Street by Jerry Rafferty. I mean, we've heard bits and snippets and stuff. And here's another good one. I mean, shoot, if you're going to go into Henson, has he ever done this before? Has he just recorded doing a bunch of cool covers, him and a guitar? Or did him and John 5 ever record a bunch of covers? Do you know what I'm saying? Do another covers record. This stuff is, it's quality recorded almost everything because he's in Henson. It's not like he's not pulling a Bruce Springsteen, Nebraska here. You know what I mean? He's not sitting up. Listen, this is somebody who somewhere somehow spells hashtags wrong. Okay, as you point out to me. So I don't expect him to have a Pro Tools rig in his house, but working on this by himself. You know, that's not who Dave is. But there's
actually I've heard.
I knew you were gonna.
I'm not trying to like overtalk. I'm not trying to contradict, dude. But it sounds like there's home recording capability going on, but that he prefers the vibe of Henson.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, regardless, let's put it this way. Again, there's probably not a lot of Nebraska sounding tapes if you're familiar how Bruce Springsteen recorded that. I mean, I would bet most of this stuff is releasable quality. And even if it's not, who cares? Right? I mean, think of the stuff that he's kind of released and did some weird things. All this weird stuff is really nothing new. How far back does 50 Rides on the Love Train go? Where it's an hour's worth of him dancing, which is fun and love. But every version is him singing along a different version, doing all these vocal inflections, most sounding pretty damn good, warming up to what he says one of his all-time favorite songs, Love Train by the OJs. What other cool soul stuff has he done like that before? Do you know? Yeah. I mean, shit. Give me I don't know. Give me What's Going On by Marvin Gaye. 50 Rides on that. You know what I'm saying? What else has he done like that? But I would encourage you, if you haven't, you got to do it in bits and pieces. Unfortunately, the tapes archive has timestamps for everything, right? If you ever see in their video notes, but he really gets into it with and some real. She's a pretty good interviewer, but it's really an in-depth kind of real interview to me. Here's my idea on the Uncle Manny thing, by the way, Cafe Wah. So, because I'm weird like this, I and love old comedians or older comedians, I finally got around to reading the great comedian Robert Klein's book, The Amorous Busboy of Decatur Avenue, which is basically the story of how often he got laid back in the 60s, which I had no idea was about. And even the blurb on the back from Joan Rivers was, it's a great book. I had no idea he was such a sex addict. The book actually ends in like the late 60s before he really became a comic. But he came up with it in that Greenwich Village scene, right? Where it was the Bottom Line and Cafe Watt. When Dave talks about that scene at that place, and I've heard other people talk about this and historians about the Greenwich Village scene, that was the real deal. You know, comedians and improv, they played Cafe Wah. Robert Klein did. I mean, a lot of people did.
Yes.
You know, all this stuff has gone to history. Does Dave have cool photos? Could he write the forward or do something, get together with an author to write the definitive history of Cafe Wah or do you know what I'm saying? I mean, totally. Does he have photos from his Uncle Manny, who died only a few years ago, nearing the age of 100?
Yeah. And cutting you off here, Van Halen did that infamous, like, low-key gig at Cafe Wah, which Florentine and other people filmed. But you know, in this day and age where everything old is new again, Mrs. Maisel really spotlighted that era.
Right.
So it's not like this is irrelevant stuff that nobody cares about, because Mrs. Maisel definitely brought light to Lenny Bruce, who I think Dave referenced Lenny Bruce in my interview that I did with him in 2003.
Right.
So this is stuff that he knows. And doesn't he say that Uncle Manny was the original manager of Richard Pryor?
In this interview, he mentions Richard. I can't remember. He gave him one of his first gigs, I think. It's early on that interview. I was listening to it last week. It's a lot to digest.
Yeah. I'm sure. But the idea is, like, talk about that. That's interesting. You have to assume that the diehard David Lee Roth fans are over a certain age. They're pop culture obsessed, and they have attention spans, hence being able to tolerate artists who are unreliable to their fan base.
Well, we also want to see behind the curtain. You know, for all the world, it's easy to rip on Kiss, the end of the never-ending End of the Road tour. You can make the argument it should have ended 5 years ago, 3 years before it actually started, or whatever. You know what I mean? I mean, God bless them still going out there, but it's time, you know. All that aside, you know, it's an amazing quality production. They're giving the fans, I think, their dollars worth, and these are a lot of fans with deep pocket, but the amount of soundboard, Kiss is mining that legacy while they're still here, right? They're mining those archives. They're giving fans what they want, which is something Van Halen had to be twisted and freaking pulled into barely doing with a studio record and a world tour that consisted of 2, maybe 3 countries throughout their career.
Well, a thing that I watched a couple of nights ago, there was a documentary on the Rainbow in LA that came out, I think, in 2019 or early 2020.
Okay.
Have you seen this?
No, but I remember, I know what you're referring to. Yeah.
Gravitas Ventures distributes it. You can find it on YouTube for free legally. And something that bothers me in it is they're talking about, they really confuse a lot of people, in my opinion, because they're talking about the Whiskey A Go-Go on the Sunset Strip and the Rainbow at the same time. And most people don't realize the Rainbow is just a restaurant bar. It's not a venue.
Right.
Like, people played in the parking lot, but it's not a venue.
No, everybody hung out there. You could see let me kill myself at the bar playing video poker or whatever it was, right?
Yeah.
He was there all the time.
Did you ever see him there? I saw him once there.
I did not see him there the couple of times I went back, early 2000s, I think.
07, someone's like, yeah, if you're lucky, you'll see Lemmy. And I walk in there like, yep, there he is in the seat playing video. Like, what's the difference in these photos? He was playing that machine or poker or blackjack, whatever it was. Lemmy's awesome. This documentary, you could tell certain people were able to participate or willing to, and other people's not. So it's talking about Van Halen. No one from Van Halen participated. Gene Simmons did. And you're going, Gene Simmons is from New York. Gene Simmons did not move to Los Angeles.
Right.
What, 84 or 85?
Right, exactly.
Gene Simmons doesn't drink, so he was not hanging out at the
They have a great omelet.
Yeah, more or less. So he's talking about all the great things about the Rainbow in that scene and not Van Halen, who had their residencies on the Sunset Strip at Gazzarri's and all that. So it's the kind of thing where, because Gene and Kiss and people like that are willing to speak up and take that limelight,
Dave hung out at the Rainbow Bar and Grill hundreds of times in his life. I've seen pictures.
They briefly mention Dave, then they tell a Van Hagar story that they conflate with a pre-fate Van Halen thing with Dave. You know, you'd have to be a real nerd to go, that's a Hagar thing that happened in 86. That didn't, okay, whatever it is.
Right.
Because Van Halen's not participating and not speaking up, because they're not in this Lowe's Hour documentary, because they don't have a biopic like The Dirt had with Motley Crue, because they're not doing all these things, the legacy is going to die, and Gene Simmons is going to take it all from them. That's where I'm going with that.
I don't know if it'll ever completely die thanks to Eddie's guitar playing, but as far as the reach it could have, right? There's so much that is and will be missing, I think.
Oh, okay. In terms of Eddie's guitar playing, yes and no. Did you see the Rolling Stone top 250 guitarists list that came out this week?
Yeah, Eddie, and I long ago stopped letting those drive me crazy. Was he top? He was top 10, number 4, I think.
He was number 4. Jimmy Page was 3. I forget who was 2. 1 was Hendrix. Okay, that's fine. But in this list, St. Vincent ranked higher than Eric Clapton.
Yeah. See, those lists still do exactly what they want them to do. Get people talking about it and getting people annoyed and crazy by that. Eddie, in my mind, because he impacted so many, if not more, guitar players than Hendrix, he should be number 2 behind Hendrix. And if you're talking, actually, let's put it this way: electric rock guitar players. I mean, Clapton, you can call a blues guitarist. Do you know what I mean? How big was his impact? He didn't write a lot of songs. You know, I mean, I'm not saying his impact, it was certainly huge on Eddie, but as far as who brought Clapton should definitely be up there. Okay. But I'm sure, St. Vincent, come on. You know what I mean? It's
Annie Clark is fantastic as a musician. Annie Clark is very popular. But let's think of all those great St. Vincent riffs that we hear at the sporting events. Right. All those St. Vincent model guitars that we all, buy. And now I'm not saying Slash is one of the 10 best guitar players ever, but if you're going to say, why did most people buy a guitar? Slash is in the top 10. You think of him with the Gibson Les Paul, almost
Right.
about to fall over. Same with Joe Perry. Whether or not Joe Perry's playing is what changed everything.
It's about impact.
Yes, exactly. And so therefore these people have all the models through Gibson and all the knockoffs. And so the fact that Eddie is now number 4 on that list, Rolling Stone, if they redo this list in about 8 years, Eddie will be like 26 on
Don't say it. Don't say it.
And all this is because they're just not playing the game with licensing merch, with preserving the archives, etc. So the most mainstream music ever is becoming cult level as a result of this. It's infuriating because that's why this podcast more or less started.
There you go. I'll leave you with this one other thing.
Yeah.
If there's only ever one other thing. In my imagination, I always think about what could be or what I would love to see.
Yeah.
And we'll never see this, but I would a definitive Dave documentary with Dave a part of it.
Okay, I would love that. And what I've heard is, I'm not revealing sources, people have told me that Dave has been asked to be in other people's documentaries, not just Slow's Hour, other people's, and he won't. That's not his thing. And you're like, so you don't want to ever tell your definitive story. And I've also heard that his autobiography is out of print by choice.
Interesting.
So if you can get it on Amazon, it might be a used copy or it might be a remaindered copy, but I've heard it is properly out of print by choice, not Hyperion wanting it out of print.
Right. Well, this is as good a segue as any into a new book about David Lee Roth coming out.
Now that it sounds like I don't like the guy, hey, I love the guy's music. I love his innovation, but unfortunately, all these people have been using me as a doormat to go, hey, so Dave screwed me over with this. I've kind of become like the source of all that stuff. And of course, you never take everything in 100% face value. But my book, I'm going to say, is 80 to 90% super positive about Dave. It points out some of his misstated facts over the years, but it is intended to be a tribute.
Hey, you are, and we are, as we say at the top, we're fans. We're not fanboys.
If we're wrong about anything, Team Dave, tell us, what are we wrong about?
Right.
What are we lying about? What are we misstating? Until you tell us that, what can we do? We can only speculate. And I don't think, the speculating is how you preserve a legacy in a positive way.
Yeah. Speculation. Listen, speculation has got us 80 plus episodes or whatever with interviews. And it's what we got to go on, I mean, that's all we have at the moment, give or take these, things that drop like, Manda Bala or whatever, I mean.
Yeah. I mean, what we're at kind of right now is not very different from, say, a WWE podcast where we're talking about storylines and hypothetically, this could be better. The big difference is that a Vince McMahon or an overarching figure from one of these companies every year or 2 or 3 goes, you know what, I'm going to do something that's on the record and clear the air. And then they help correct or fix certain things. In this case, we're getting 0% of that. Dave did his last media blitz in 2019, and then he did
around Ink the Original.
Around Ink the Original, when he said that there was going to be the kitchen sink tour. And
is the last actual interview he did was that even an interview, when it was an audio statement about throwing in the shoes?
After that was Rogan,
Vegas.
the second Rogan interview, and then also the red carpet at the VMAs where they asked him about watching Real Housewives, if you want to call that an interview.
September 2021.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's really all that, and hugging a squirrel statue on his property are really what we've got. And whereas in
Oh,
2019,
wait a minute. Don't forget, there was that little LAX interview earlier this year coming back from Mexico.
from the
Where he
paparazzi,
looked great. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, whereas Handler was in the background. I've noticed the Handler in more stuff. As for example, the video that Steve Brown from Trickster posted backstage at a Kiss show of Dave walking to the stage. I assume you see
Yes.
that.
Oh, yeah.
You see his handler there, and when I say handler, that is his accountant slash manager slash hirer and firer, etc. He is one person doing all that.
I mean, with the level of activity, do you need more?
Absolutely.
That was a rhetorical question.
Well, if your career is based on, and I'm being serious here, if your career is based on playing defense, like the last few years of David Bowie's career, where he's like, I'm not touring, I don't want anyone to know anything, just shoot down rumors and say no to stuff, collect the checks. Yes. But in the case of Roth, where there's regularly inquiries to license stuff and there's these corporate gigs, you do need somebody on offense also.
Right. And there is activity. It's not like we're going, wow, it's been 6 months since Dave last posted anything, or whoever posted stuff. There is stuff. It's complete non sequitur types of posts. Well, no, there's some themes. We have it in phases, the artwork, and then the comic, and then some John 5 songs, and now going back into the No Holds Barbecue re-edits, I guess, right? So I guess, so there is always activity. There is stuff going on. It's just there's no rhyme, no reason to so much of it that we can see.
I heard a rumor, allegedly, hashtag allegedly, that he was interested in one of those estate catalog sales. And when all the artists were doing that in the midst of the pandemic, there was interest, there were offers, and he walked.
Oh, where he sells his publishing.
I heard
and gets a big sum up front.
I also heard that the Van Halen publishing catalog, the way that we understand it, is not true. That Sammy and Michael sold their shares outright at a certain point in time, not in the last year or two, but had sold their stuff. So in other words, that there's complex stuff that the everyday public does not understand, but has not been corrected. So in other words, I believe there have been rights reversions and there have been changed deals over time. It's just they never put out a press release to go, hey, everybody, you're wrong and we're fine.
You know what's interesting about that is, so the songwriting credits have always been divvied up, even if the royal 50, in quarters, right? And of course, we know what they did to Michael. If you look at it, and I've forgotten, publishing and mechanical royalties, all this stuff is a multi-headed, very complex beast. We should have somebody come up and explain it sometime in a little bit more detail. But if I recall, A Different Kind of Truth, all songs are credited to the 4 of them. Mm-hmm. It also says lyrics by David Lee Roth for the first time ever. But if you noticed, I'm pretty sure, and it's not arm's reach, but it's the first time I saw it all under individual publishing companies.
Yes.
Or at least 2 different ones. Maybe the Van Halens were under one, but it all just wasn't, say, Warner Chappell, whatever, BMI, whatever, what I mean? It was all public, they all had their own publishing names on it, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, they had seceded from the normal. The way I'm understanding, that's a new word. Let's that one. I'm understanding.
You and I are conversating. That's what we're doing.
Is that everything was originally under Van Halen, then it went under Warner Chappell, then things moved around a bit, then it came back to Warner Chappell, then it moved around a bit, and that everything is everywhere and convoluted. That's the way I understand it. But when we look up things and we Google things online, it'll say Warner Chappell because people either don't understand or they don't have access to the information. I've also heard that when it comes to unreleased songs, that Team Dave does not register them until they're coming out, if they even do. So meaning a lot of artists will just they finish the song, they demo it, they register it with ASCAP, BMI, and or CSAC, and they're publishing. Not Dave and not Van Halen. They've never been that way.
Wonder why.
Yeah, so it's
getting back to what you talked about before. I don't know how you could if you're going to sell the publishing royalties for like the first 6, if you're going to make one of these big deals that Springsteen and other people did,
yes.
All solo artists, by the way, right? And get all that big cash up front and somebody licensed in perpetuity. Dave can't be the only one to say yes to that. The Van Halen estate has got to, do you know what I mean? It's like,
you would think that, except now in this day and age, individual band members can sell off their shares. So we saw Mick Fleetwood sell off his royalties to BMG. And so you're like, so if you're clearing the thing, you have to do a special clearance just for BMG, just for Mick, and then clear everything else. And potentially the whole deal does not happen because BMG complicated the whole thing. In the case of Dave, he brings his Van Halen stuff and his solo material. Now, I don't think that his solo albums reverted to him through Warner. I think that Van Halen's masters have reverted in some fashion or are going to revert in some fashion based on the fact that Metallica's did, and I think U2's are going to, etc.
And maybe also after a certain number of years, maybe there's a 30 years plus whatever. Yeah. I mean, there's so many. Listen, there's a reason why record business accounting is, in quotes, record business accounting, so
yeah. So what I'm getting at is estate sale was discussed at one point in time, but not fully pursued.
Well, to my understanding for that is, I mean, all these folks that do this for the most part are older artists because they're going to get more in one lump sum for their remaining.
Bieber's an older artist.
What's that?
Bieber's an older artist. Bieber and Timberlake have done these. But so did Julian from the Strokes in the last.
But you know what? That's a real gamble on their part because if they're going to be around for another 40, 50 years, are they going to make more 40 years, let's say at least? Katy Perry's, how old is she? 30, 38, 40?
Probably 40, yeah.
Okay. Is she going to make more money unless she's given up over royalties over 40 years than she would a lump sum? You possibly could.
Definitely not, because
and I think there's some tax advantages of doing it somewhere too. I mean, in Bieber's case, listen, he might never have another hit record again. I mean, I guess I can see both sides of it.
Yeah, some of these deals you go, oh, that could go either way, and then some of them, like say the Strokes, you go, that was a good move, Julian, smart.
It's probably a good idea to do it now because that money's drying up. The money paid for these massive catalogs 2 or 3 years ago ain't there anymore.
No, and what they pay on commercials, like something that I learned, this is going way into the weeds and I apologize, but an artist who was on the management team, they had a song, I think in the 2nd season of Grey's Anatomy, and then they had another song in the 6th season of Grey's Anatomy, and the fee was a half or a third of what it was in the 2nd season. So the fees kept going down the longer these series were going on. And we know that it's like a 3% inflation rate in currency, if you want to get really nerdy. So it's not like the rights fees keep going up. The rights fees are going down over time, the dollar's getting weaker. So, So anyway, yeah, Dave, that was a possibility at some point. So he is thinking about legacy. He just has not followed through. So, we could post this, and tomorrow there could be another John 5 song, and in 3 days there could be another corporate gig, and there could be 3 more No Holds Barbecue posts this week. And
this is how we always close, right?
We'll be just as confused as ever.
Yeah. I don't know. We should time things out for when we have that episode. We're coming close to 100 episodes, even though we've slowed down the last year or so for various reasons, not the least of which is health and life reasons. However, maybe get that big I don't even know how the hell did we do a retrospective. Maybe episode 100. Maybe we're closing up shop, folks. Maybe we're throwing in the shoes. I don't know. But of course, you know what happened when we say it's been a great ride. Thanks a lot. A week later, holy shit, everything. Right.
Yeah, we'll find out that there was supposed to be another Van Halen tribute tour after Satriani and Jason Newsted. We'll find out there was supposed to be another lineup that was going to have Steve Vai and Billy Sheehan, and then that got axed. And then we're going to find out that the Skyscraper 35 is going
right. Which reminds me, and maybe this is a teaser for a forthcoming episode. I've always had this long mental list going, which I started writing down bits and pieces of musicians I would love, not just guitar players, but like kind of dream bands for Dave.
Sure.
And I've got a bunch of folks. I mean, now granted, I don't know how many drummers are out there that might want to work with Dave. That seems to be a revolving door, as we've discussed before. But I've got a list going of who I love. But however, you have to take out Vai, you have to take out Sheehan, you have to take out Bissonette, obviously Jason Becker, unfortunately, and John Five. After that, though, there's a lengthy list of people I think would be great with that all sorts of different players I think would have been cool with Dave. And I got some ideas on why maybe Dave also couldn't keep chasing the star guitarist after Becker anymore, you know? So for forthcoming episode. So you and I have officially made a pact. There's no Dave news. We're going into fantasy booking mode, style. And we still can do the song-oramas as well. So there is music out there. It's just, Lord knows, we might be the only people still interested.
Well, what we have learned today, Dave, be more like Rob Zombie or Gene Simmons, and we'll take it from there. But in the meantime, thanks to anyone who indulged us by listening this long, and thanks for the ongoing support. Steve, keep up the greatness. Glad to see you back and doing great.
My pleasure, my friend. And let's not forget either, January 1st, publication of your David Lee Roth book. You can pre-order now. Links and details are in the show notes. We've been talking since forever. It's already mid-October. It's not that far away.
Thank you all. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks.